Well, hello there. I'm so glad you pressed play. My name's Helen Bennett. I struggled with overeating, compulsive overeating, for 20 years, and I cannot wait to share with you the methodology that I use. I call it the food freedom formula. It's the method that I use to help people pinpoint exactly what is creating the compulsive overeating, because it's just a symptom. It's not the real problem. And today you're going to get so clear on exactly what the real problem is for you specifically, and more importantly, what the hell to do about it. So let's dive in. I've had a lot of fun in the last 2 weeks creating a bunch of slides, but I'm going to try and move through them as quickly as I can because I know we're all short on time. And if you have any questions, you're welcome to get hold of me after this training. But for now, let's just dive in. All right. So you want to end decades, often decades, of stress eating, emotional eating, mindless snacking, anytime you're feeling compulsive, impulsive around food, and you've probably tried just about everything. I'm pretty sure if you've been struggling with this for a while, I'm not your first call. I'm not your first rodeo. You've tried a lot of things. And what's really important to me is that I help you get a clear understanding of what the real problem is. A, so you don't try another thing that won't work, but B, so that we can set you on the right path to finally experiencing true freedom with food. And that's what I want to do with you today. I'm holding nothing back because I literally have nothing to lose by sharing my methodology with you, because we all know that actually it's in the action, it's in the changes that we need to make that the real magic happens. So firstly, who is this for? Well, it's for anybody who's feeling completely out of control at times around food, like food is the boss of you, not the other way around. You might call yourself a boredom eater, a comfort eater, a stress eater. You might be somebody who's been yo-yo dieting. You might be a workaholic, and chances are there's a high probability that you are a people pleaser, an overthinker, and you might even be a perfectionist. So if that sounds like you, you're one of those things, you're in the right place. These are the kind of things that you might notice that are the thoughts in your head. Things like, I'm addicted to sugar, I eat all my feelings, especially if you're somebody who feels like you're really intelligent. I mean, you're not stupid, right? You're probably highly qualified, you're educated, maybe you're even a professional who's running an unbelievable business, or a mother who's quite capable of doing a million things and putting her willpower into a bazillion different tasks. But when it comes to the discipline that's required to change your eating habits, it's befuddling, because you don't know why you can't stop. And you're not unintelligent. You know what you should do. You just don't seem to be doing it. If that's you, you're in the right place. And this is what you're going to learn during the course of this training. You're going to learn the 5-step formula that I use to help people who are impulsive or compulsive overeaters go from fuck it to food freedom in a matter of 4 to 12 months, and sometimes less. We're going to explore why ditching diets is actually the best thing you could possibly do. Weirdly, you'll actually find yourself eating less, and this will work better than willpower ever could. In fact, you won't need willpower. That's what we want, right? Otherwise, it wouldn't be freedom if we're having to implement force all the time. Then we're also going to be talking about how to silence food noise. I know it's insane, the constant waking up and thinking about, obsessing about food. It is taking up so much brain space, so much bandwidth. We want to get rid of that so you can actually focus on the things that matter. We're going to talk about there's 2 big blocks that I generally see can prevent people from breaking free. And also, we're going to dive into the single biggest mistake prevent people from completely breaking free, and particularly people pleasers. So if you're a people pleaser, listen up, because that one's going to be for you. Most importantly, why overeating isn't the problem. Food is just a plaster. We want to get to the root of this big old wound. We want to clean it out properly, and we want to let it heal up the right way. And that's what this training's all about. And my promise to you is I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. I will not be painting rainbows and unicorns on things. If it's hard, it's hard. Sometimes it's better, in fact, I think all the time, to just name the uncomfortable, to be willing to say the uncomfortable, the things that may not even serve me, the things that might push you away, if that's what it takes to help get you the results that you're here for. I'm also not holding anything back. This is the formula. There's nothing more that you need to know. There's not going to be some magic secret that you have to go behind another door to find. This is it. This is everything that I have for you. Who is this not for? Well, as you might have guessed by now, this is not for somebody who's looking for a quick fix. This isn't necessarily going to be easy. Some of the work is quite challenging. And I would be lying to you if I said that you could undo decades of chaotic thinking and eating behaviors and emotional, eating or feelings in 8 weeks. I think that's bollocks. And if anybody's telling you that, they're probably lying. So this isn't a quick fix. It's also not a weight loss program. Really important upfront to say that. While weight loss is absolutely a side benefit often of the work that I do, depending on the people. Not everybody comes in looking for weight loss. Some people come in with very normal, healthy weight bodies, but they still struggle with food. But for now, this is definitely not our focus. Our focus today is on repairing your relationship with food. Then when you reintroduce weight loss done the right way, it can not only come off, but stay off. And then lastly, this isn't for anybody who doesn't like insanely valuable free content with a great big offer at the end. So yes, I'm going to take you through my formula. Right at the end, I'm going to make you an invitation to work with me. And if you don't like that, well, then probably best to stop watching now, because that's what's coming. Speaking of which, hidden in this training is a little Easter egg. It's a special gift code, a word that you will need to remember, that should you choose to take me up on my invitation, bring that word with you, because that will give you access to a really special gift, which I can't wait for you to discover. Let's dive in. Who the hell am I? I didn't even really tell you much. So there's me. The top photo is me at 16 years old. That's when this all began. That was my 16th birthday party. And probably within a month or two of that, I was struggling with losing control with food. And since then, for the 20 years after that, if you find a photo of me, it's probably I'm exercising. It was my primary way of trying to compensate with all the binge eating. So I'd wake up every day thinking, I'm going to be great today. I'm going to eat perfectly. I'm not going to overeat. And then, before long, I was blowing out. And as a way of coping with that, I was either exercising to extreme or I was vomiting. I was actually throwing up my food. I still find it hard to talk about. I'm not ashamed of it anymore, but I understand how confronting that might be for some people. But some of you listening might be thinking, well, thank God she understands, because maybe it's something that you've either tried or struggled with yourself. So I really, really say that not to shock you, but to help you really know that I get what it is to experience not just the occasional impulsive desire to overeat, but the real all-consuming, overwhelming compulsion that comes with out of control, feeling out of control with food, and feeling like it's dominating my entire thought. Every thought, my whole life just became about, what am I going to eat? What am I going to eat? How little can I eat to try and stop the binge? And the cycle was horrific, and I struggled with it for 20 years. And I honestly thought I'd tried everything. I tried a bunch of therapy. I did all sorts of CBT and all sorts of other things, and nothing seemed to change. Felt like I was healing a lot about the past and why it had all happened, but nobody was giving me the practical skills that I needed to change the behaviors. Luckily, one day when I had been running a CrossFit gym, the gym closed, and I had a bit of sort of breathing space and a bit of time. I remember sitting on my bed and thinking, there's got to be a way. I just can't believe that we can send people to the moon, but I can't seem to stop this overeating. I felt completely powerless, but I was convinced there had to be a way, and I just had to find it. And thank God I kept looking, because I did. Luckily, there was a way. I stumbled into some wonderful coaches and teachers, and I had a few aha moments, which I won't dive into today, but essentially it put me on a path and a trajectory where I started testing out different things. And really those things led me into what I now call the food freedom formula, which is really the methodology that I use to help people. But I want you to know that so much of what I speak about today comes from me actually having lived experience of going from somebody who was binge eating and then purging through exercise or vomiting up to 7 times a day, to having a completely free relationship with food, where I can eat when I'm hungry, stop when I'm full, indulge occasionally without any guilt, and, just be happy and healthy and free. And I really want that for you too. And I know, because I've done this work for a long time now, and I've worked with people all over the world, and I've worked with people with different severities of overeating, compulsive overeating, and it can absolutely work for you too. There's no reason this wouldn't work for you. And by the end of this training, you'll understand exactly why. Quick heads up. I am a coach. I've done multiple different coach certifications, but what I'm not is a qualified eating disorder professional or psychotherapist, and don't make any changes to your diet or your exercise plan or any kind of treatment plan that you're on if you've been recommended something by someone, without communicating that with them first. So with that in mind, let's dive in. So I said initially, the real problem is not food. That food is just a symptom. It's a solution, in fact, to a deeper problem. Let's get stuck into what the deeper problems are. We're going to do this as a series of lessons that I had to learn the hard way, starting with the one that was probably the biggest surprise to me and is the one that I get the most pushback on, although I think deep down we all know this to be true. There's a wonderful author, Janine Roth, and she says, for every diet, there is an equal and opposite binge. And I've come to see that to be true. So I'm not sure if you are aware of this, but 90 to 98%, depending on what statistics you look at, of diets actually fail. So if diets fail, are you the problem? Or is it the methodology that you've been using that's the problem? It would be a bit like buying an iPhone that has a 98%, failure rate and blaming yourself when the phone stops working. But in fact, diets generally fail and we blame ourselves. But the thing is, restriction is predictive. It's not guaranteed, but it is predictive of weight gain and it is predictive of compulsive eating. And so what I was doing by trying to control what felt so out of control was actually horrifically making my overeating worse. And I bet it's the same for you. Now let's dive in. Let's take a bit of time here. I'm going to spend a little bit longer on this one to understand why that's the case. The first reason is survival. If we decrease our nutritional intake, our caloric intake, there are all sorts of negative side effects that begin to occur. And I've put a photo up there of the men that were involved in the Minnesota semi-starvation experiment. It was done in the 1940s with about 36 odd perfectly healthy men who had no history of eating disorders or mental disorders. And they volunteered at the University of Minnesota to go through a period of semi-starvation so that the researchers could learn how best to refeed the starving populations of Europe as they came out of World War II. These completely healthy, happy men, after going through this experiment, came out the other side experiencing things like, and there was a laundry list of negative side effects, but things like food obsession and preoccupation. They were collecting recipes, thinking about food all the time, planning every single meal. They were experiencing extreme mood swings, irritability, depression, anxiety, decreased libido, and hey ho, what do you know? Binge eating. And some of them struggled with binge eating for quite some time after going through this experiment, despite the fact that they were all perfectly back to a healthy weight and never had to worry about having food restricted from them again. So does that sound familiar? Because when I heard the list, the laundry list of things that were the side effects that these men had experienced, I was shocked because I thought that sounds just like me. And what I've come to realize is that is the common experience of anybody who's been through multiple, quite severe, restrictive diets, as so many of us were when we were younger, particularly if they started in our teens, even worse, because then we're developing, our brain's developing, our body's developing, and it's going to rebel. And when it finally does, it makes it very hard to ever diet again. I put a picture of Superman, of Henry Cavill, the actor, there because he speaks about doing a movie where he had to have a six-pack and be super cut. He was going shirtless for the scene, and they wanted him in best shape and looking amazing. And in order for them to look that good, we think it's just what men are supposed to look like. But in these movies, they have to go to extreme lengths to get that perfect, the perfect abs. And one of the things they do is they dehydrate themselves. And I think it was a period of about 3 days. And Henry Cavill talks about how he was so dehydrated that he began to smell water. The obsession and the attunement of his senses for water went off the charts. He couldn't believe water had a smell, as I'm sure none of us can. And yet the need for it became so profound that his body just became obsessed and could actually smell it. So if you're somebody who finds yourself salivating the minute you see food in your Instagram feed or somebody talking about it and you're thinking about it all the time, perhaps restriction has got something to do with it. And I'd say not even perhaps. Right, next up, scarcity. This is the funny quirk of human nature. or human psychology, but it's something that marketers and salesmen have been using on us forever and ever and ever. And it's the idea of scarcity that creates a increased desire. When we make something scarce, either we say there's a limited quantity or you can only have it for a limited period of time, it weirdly increases our desire for the very thing. Even if we didn't want it, we'd want more. And then it actually gets us to take action. So if you're, going down a marketing funnel on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, you will notice that they'll use things like limited time, only so many spots. If you've ever been, that's a little bit of a shot from EasyJet, where there always seems to be only 2 or 3 seats left on a plane, no matter how far in advance you seem to book. All of it is to try to get you to take the action to spend your money. And the same thing with food. If we think we can only have it in a limited time period, because cheat days are only on Sundays, or on Monday I'll be good and I'll start again, it creates an increased desire. And also if we think we're only allowed so much of it, so caloric restriction, macro restriction, completely disregarding what our body's actually asking for, actually will increase our desire. So it actually dials the food noise up when we think we can't eat something. And I've kept Superman in there because think of it another way. I bet you there was a guy at school or a girl at school that you were just completely obsessed with because you kind of thought you couldn't have him or her. And maybe even got lucky enough to hook up with that person one day. And maybe it wasn't that great. And then the desire just went right down because you finally had what you thought you couldn't have. And, it's just human. And maybe it wasn't that fantastic after all. But up until then, it was the only thing, or he or she was the only thing you could think about. Am I right? So survival and scarcity are 2 reasons that decreasing our caloric intake or our nutritional intake can dial up the obsession, the compulsion, the overeating. So does it sound familiar? Your first diet was a huge success. Most people say their first diet was fantastic. They did extremely well, maybe even their second and third as well. But since then, you've never quite managed to stick to one. You've never quite managed to get the same results. And you've tried all sorts of things, intermittent fasting, cutting out carbs, counting macros, maybe you've even doubled down on some of these things, but it always ends up the same way. There ends up being either kind of a big old bingy blowout or a slow incremental weight gain where you just can't maintain that level of willpower. And all the weight comes back on. And probably, if you're watching this, the compulsion around food gets worse and the shame and the guilt around food got worse. But just imagine for a moment, really take yourself there. If you could just wake up knowing that you'd be able to eat whatever you wanted. You didn't have to worry about it. You don't have to think about it. Maybe you plan it, but only because that would be convenient. But you could literally have anything. Nothing's off limits. And you don't have to worry about weight gain. You don't have to obsess. There's no guilt. There's no shame. It's just freedom. Well, lovelies, that is the experience I have now, which is phenomenal when 10 years ago I was in the absolute hell of bulimia and compulsion that I was in. And if it can work for me, this can absolutely work for you too. So what is the first step? The first step I would do with pretty much anybody I work with is reconnect. You've got to reconnect you with that incredible, wonderful, amazing body of yours and actually start listening again. So we've got to tune into our tummies again. Your tummy is your second brain. It has the highest amount of neurons after your brain. There is so much intelligence down there. We're so busy listening to gurus on YouTube and podcasts. We're completely ignoring this unbelievable intelligence inside us. And what most people discover just on the first or second session, as we begin to do what I call tummy check-ins, is when we actually begin to listen to our bodies, our tummies specifically, they're not asking us to eat crap. Sometimes, occasionally, they might ask for some things that we might call junk food. But mostly, when we do a tummy check and we actually listen, we get our heads out of the way and we actually listen, our tummies are asking for these unbelievably balanced and we might call healthful foods, whole foods, nutritious foods, like real balanced plates. It's incredible how intelligent that is. But we've been so bombarded with information and shoulds from the nutritional, gurus out there that we forget we can actually listen to that body of ours. Now, it can take some time, a lot of practice, but we can begin to trust that little intuition, that signal from inside us. It can also take a while for it to wake up if we've been ignoring it for so long. And over time, we can learn to hear that satiety signal as well, that feeling of comfort and fullness. And we can learn to stop there. And then when we get real badasses at food freedom, we can comfortably indulge without any guilt or shame because, the worst thing is you're just going to be fuller for longer. And then when you check in with your tummy, it won't want as much at the next mealtime. No big deal. Now, some of you might be thinking, but Helen, if I eat whatever I want, then I'm never going to stop eating. I can understand that because after such a long period of being in like food police, food jail, you can be like a bit of a kid in a candy shop when the chains are released and you can actually eat what your tummy wants. And I get that. But for the most part, what I see is that people are just so relieved that their tummies want them to eat good food. And it's so enjoyable and so satisfying that it's very quick that they prefer just tuning into their tummies. Now, remember, eating what your tummy wants is not just eat whatever you want. It's about eating what your tummy is asking for. So we got to reconnect with that signal again in the quantities that it asks for, and then learning to stop when we hear that stop signal, that little fullness switch. Now, if you've grown up with the clean plate club, you came from a family you had to eat everything on your plate, that can be challenging. But the better you get at it, and it's like anything, you'll get better with practice, the easier this gets. And usually when I work with people, they don't necessarily lose weight initially, but they don't gain weight either. They get to this nice place where they realize, oh my gosh, I can actually trust this signal in my tummy. So it takes practice, takes time, but you'll be delighted and amazed as you reconnect with that inner second brain of yours that knows exactly what it's doing. Doesn't need to be bossed around by our diet plans. Throughout this training, I'm going to sprinkle in some screenshots from my weekly check-ins with clients or maybe WhatsApps because I do a lot of WhatsApp support of actual clients experiencing what I'm talking about. I'm not going to go through it all with you now, but feel free to pause the video and zoom in and you can have a good old squiz through what it's like for people when they actually, eat a hamburger for the first time and enjoy it and feel that real beautiful satisfaction because it was exactly what their tummy wanted and they stopped when they're full and they didn't binge eat the rest of the kitchen later out of guilt and shame. Now that we've done that one, that was the most important one, but let's dive into the non-hunger reasons that we overeat. So the second hard lesson that I had to learn was that the biggest triggers aren't out there. It's not toxic people. It's actually the thoughts that we have in our head. It's the thoughts in here that are the problem. These thoughts, these negative thoughts that don't serve us, the thoughts that can trip us into doing behaviors that we absolutely want to stop, are what I call headworms. And without going again too deeply into them, they can be things like thinking something like, I have zero impulse control. Now, if we think we have zero impulse control, then chances are we're not going to control the impulse. So does it sound familiar? Your mind has become a really bad neighborhood. You've got worry and anger and despair and judgment and criticism and shame and guilt just floating around there all day. And that stuff can actually make you want to eat more. Because sometimes you're punishing yourself because you feel if you deserve it, and food can become a punishment. And sometimes you're actually just trying to escape all that negativity that's in your mind and just want to feel good for a second or just quiet it down. And food has the capacity to do that, or eating does anyway. But imagine, just imagine if that incredible piece of hardware up there, that brain of yours, could be reprogrammed to become your biggest ally, your greatest cheerleader, your coach, your best friend. Imagine if that could be what your mind becomes. How different would things look? So this is what I love about being a coach. One of my favorite parts of the work is actually helping people rethink, which means we got to get in there into the headworms, as I say. You've got a bad case of headworms. We need to first we got to pinpoint what are those mental triggers, those thoughts and beliefs that you're thinking that are leading to the overeating. And then we've got to replace them with something far better. And you know what's so cool is you get to choose. You get to reprogram the computer upstairs and you get to choose what to think. Now, that sounds a bit, you might think, well, that doesn't sound like that's going to work, but it does. Whatever we think repeatedly, we begin to believe. And then our brain finds evidence for it. And then we believe it even more. Because I bet that half the things you believe about yourself, A, aren't true, and B, your brain's been searching for evidence to back them up for years. So, as a great coach said to me, is, you've been lying to yourself for years. You may as well start telling yourself a better lie. So it's something to think about. So we've got to take those headworms, spot them, change them, reprogram through lots of repetition This hardware, we've got to rewire all of that into something that actually serves you. I didn't actually know this until the other day, but apparently the words abracadabra mean as I speak, so I create. Because whatever we say to ourselves, whatever we speak in here, we will manifest. So why not choose thoughts and beliefs that will really serve you and the future and the freedom that you want to create? Again, here's some examples of some clients who've been through this and experiencing what a joy it is to start thinking nice things about themselves. And the lovely thing about this is it feels so good to be thinking good things repeatedly, and they start to automate because we do it so often that you never want to go back. Trust me, you never want to go back to those negative thoughts once you start reprogramming that incredible mind of yours. The third hard lesson that I learned was that we'll give up what we want to get what we need. Where this really, really applied is what I did not know, and no diet program will ever tell you, is that your emotional needs are that they're like breathing, they're primal. We think of emotions as being kind of the secondary thing that we should have so much control over, but actually we have emotional needs and they will dominate any mental decision we make about how we want to be or what we want to experience around food. If we think I want to be on a diet, but we have an emotional need that's not being met, and food comes in as a way to meet that need, we will give up what we want every time. We might want the weight loss, we might want the, freedom from food issues, but if we're not attending to our emotional needs and food becomes the only way that we're coping with our emotions, we're buggered. So for those of you who feel like you're eating your feelings, this one's for you. So what I discovered, and this took some time for me to really, really see this, is that I was eating to meet my emotional needs so often. Now, some of these might be obvious, like something like eating to meet the need for love, because we associate things like chocolate with Valentine's Day and, reward. That's another one everybody knows. Oftentimes when we're children, we're rewarded through food or meals out, celebrations. So we're meeting those needs with food. But one of the things I hadn't clocked, what took me quite a while to learn this lesson, is that we were also using food to suppress, to push down all the emotions I didn't feel I was allowed to have, or they shouldn't come out, or they were bad, or they were really uncomfortable. And food or eating, let's say, had an unbelievably good knack of pushing them down so I didn't have to experience them, or pushing them down because it wasn't safe to express them. So things like fear, anger, frustration, greed, worry, shame. If I was in an environment where I didn't feel I was allowed to express those, or I didn't want to actually experience them, eating has this unbelievable way of numbing them, soothing them, medicating them. It's phenomenal how food can do that. So does this sound familiar? Did you grow up in a household where perhaps love was conditional? And there was maybe a degree of emotional neglect. So perhaps you were told, suck it up, buttercup, or crying is for the weak, don't cry, or I'll give you something to cry about, or don't be so sensitive, or don't be so emotional. And because in that environment, you couldn't get love and acceptance and support or care on tap, or you were told that certain emotions weren't acceptable in the household, what you did is you found a way to meet those needs, to get your emotional support through food. So food became your certainty in the chaos. It became comfort when you felt distressed. It felt, just calm in the fear. It was love when you felt lonely. And it was safety when you felt you were in danger. And food was like this friend and a warm hug that you could go to at any time. It would never push you away, never reject you, never shame you, never judge you. And the problem is you're all grown up now and you're still eating your feelings. But imagine if you could actually meet your emotional needs without reaching for food. If you were able to actually express all the uncomfortable stuff. Sometimes joy can feel like an uncomfortable thing to express in an environment where joy is poo-pooed, where we have to not show our joy. And what about things like grief or anger or rage? Imagine if you could do that in a really healthy way, get it out of your system and not feel that you couldn't, and not worry about what anybody else would think or whether they'd reject you for just experiencing an emotion that's coming up inside you. So this is where we get to the third part of the formula, and that's where we learn how to release and to regulate our emotions in a way that we were never taught. The funny things about emotions is they're actually just like children in that they need to be acknowledged. You need to give them attention. They need to be comforted. They need to be soothed. They need to be held. They need to be supported. They need to be told that it's okay that they're there. And we never want to punish our emotions or tell them to shut up or sit down or go away. We never want to disregard them or shame them or judge them. And emotions, kind of like children, also need to be expressed. They need to be released. They need to come up and out. We can't bottle them up and belittle them and push them down. Well, we can, but you and I both know it ends up just, trouble that's going to come down the line, either in an eating bingy blowout or in an actual, meltdown where we overexpress ourselves. I used to be told that I was just like a simmering pot and then the lid would explode. Of course, it makes sense, right? So now it's time to learn how to parent your emotions in the way that you were never taught. Because here's the thing. It's not your fault that you don't know how to release and regulate your emotions, because chances are your parents didn't teach you how to release and regulate them, or express them in a healthy way or a way that felt safe, and because they hadn't been taught either. They learned from their parents. And, in many ways, we're all these kind of emotional, immature adults that are running around at the moment because we haven't really been taught. And so you found as a little boy or girl, you not consciously, but subconsciously, you had to find a way to regulate. And so you found a way. And not just with food. You also maybe you became, a bookworm, or you were always watching movies or video games or anything to distract you. Maybe you had imaginary friends, or you were really into like your fluffy toys or your dolls. It was anything to find friendship, connection, support, care, where you could offload your feelings and it was safe. And then sometimes we found things like hard work. That could have been a good one if you were somebody who found that working hard was a good way to get your mind off what you were experiencing. But then it can be things like picking or cutting or smoking or drinking. So it weren't always good ways, but we found ways to release and regulate our emotions. So from now onwards, when you're overeating, because emotional tends to be the one that takes the longest time to learn. Emotional regulation and release tends to be the part of the formula that can be the most challenging and take the longest time to change. But it's all good, because when you know that, then overeating oftentimes becomes this kind of flare that says, there's something going on underneath here. Help. Emotions are needing some, help here. And then you can go, oh, I'm overeating. Oh, wow, that's my signal. That's my flare that something's going on and my emotional needs aren't being met. And you can begin to learn how to meet them the right way. And don't worry, over time, this will all be automated. You won't even think about food, but it can take some time to get there. And that's completely okay. It makes complete sense. Again, here's some slides or some snippets of clients who are going through this. And it's not a straight line. It's a bumpy ride, but it's okay. You're learning. You're learning something you've never been taught, and something that many adults will never be taught, let's be honest. Hard lesson number 4. Helen, you need a break, not a Kit Kat. Because what I noticed as I did this work, especially as I was getting really good at the other pieces, is that the remaining non-hunger overeating, half the time, if not more, was just because I needed a break. It was just my body's call for rest. It's like, please, just give me a break from this work, from this expectation, from all these responsibilities. And it needed an unproductive break, not a productive break, like meditation. Meditation requires energy, requires focus, requires work. Sometimes we're human beings, we just need like fun and play and rest. But the food was a way of showing me, oh, I need a break, not a Kit Kat. I need a break. So if you're somebody who's called yourself lazy, you're not lazy. You're probably exhausted. You're probably so busy doing so much. And if you think about it and just reflect in the last few days, how much downtime have you been getting? Maybe eating is pretty much the only time in your day where you're not working, or you're not being productive, or you're not looking after somebody, or not being responsible. Yeah? So does this sound familiar? Again, if you're in a household where love is conditional, and you became a workaholic or a carer or a people pleaser or a perfectionist as a way to kind of make up for any inadequacies, or to try and get that love that was conditional, and to ensure that if you weren't perfect, at least you could do as good a job as you could, which could prevent anybody from rejecting you or abandoning you. And now, as a result of that, you've got a to-do list that's as long as your arm and a responsibility list that's even longer. And you find it exceptionally difficult to say no or to ask for help. Now, imagine if you could just feel calm and confident to say no. whenever you needed to, and to be willing to disappoint people and let them down, or for them to be a bit upset. Imagine that. And just imagine if you could ask for help, sit down and relax while somebody else did the work. If that thought fills you with a lot of discomfort, the idea of just sitting and chilling while somebody else is working on the things that you think you quote unquote should do, if that fills you with a lot of discomfort, well, then this one is for you, my friend. The fourth part of the formula is learning and building in a lot of rest and downtime. So here's your permission slip. Right now, I'm writing it to you. Imagine I'm a doctor and I'm prescribing rest. Rest, 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 rest. So much rest, way more than you can possibly imagine. You need more sleep. Oh, most important, as best as you can. You need more fun, more downtime. You need to be asking others for help. Because I know some of you are thinking, but Helen, I don't have time. I have responsibilities. I hear you. Maybe you have, a family and a career, or you have a new business, and it's so hard to be disciplined. And this is one of the disciplines that we need. It's not the discipline to say no to the donut. It's the discipline to say no to the commitment that you absolutely do not need to take, and to be willing to let somebody down, or to the discipline to say, hey, I need some help with this, or the discipline to pay for that pre-cut vegetable, packet of veggies, even though it's more expensive, because you need that extra 5 minutes in the day to rest, and it will serve you so profoundly. And this might be one of the hardest ones. Weirdly, rest can be the most challenging piece of this formula for people to implement. So if you are a people pleaser, particularly, giving yourself rest, asking for help, saying no is going to feel unbelievably uncomfortable, because it will threaten the thing that you most want to preserve, and that's people's good opinion of you at the very minimum, but loving you and liking you. And that feels like a very scary thing to risk, and I get you. But here's the thing, it's imperative that you do, and there are ways to do it. I can teach you skills to do it, where you can let people down beautifully, gently, without having to give them a million excuses. You can just say thank you and no, and it'll all be fine. And I can give you tools, should you work with me, about how to do that in a way that most likely creates the conditions for which they will feel seen and supported, and it won't feel offensive in any way, and they will get you. But it's imperative that you do, because we cannot do this work if you have no time for yourself and you're exhausted. We cannot learn anything. Name one thing that you can learn with no time and no energy and no focus. So the time, carving out 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, is going to be absolutely critical, not just for this work, but for your life ahead. Otherwise, the food just comes creeping back in, or you just jump to some new addiction that keeps you awake. Coffee, etc. All right, I have nothing against coffee, by the way. Okay, hard lesson number 5. Sometimes it's just old habits. Sometimes you can do all the other work. You've reconnected, you've regulated and released, you've rethought, and you get loads of rest, and it's still popping up. Good news, probably just a bit of old habits, same time, same place. I mean, of course, this is all habit loop work, with the habits of our thoughts, the habits of our emotional reactions, etc. But sometimes it's just 5 p.m. and it's what you've always done, or it's dessert that you always had with your parents, so you just always do it. So I'm just going to keep this one quick. We just got to rewire. Very simple process of how to change a program that's in your nervous system, an automatic habit loop, into something different. It's going to take focus. It's going to take action. We can't think our way out of this. We actually have to do new things. We probably have to set a few alarms and practice new ways of being until they become the automatic pilot. When you're driving home to a new house and you suddenly just find yourself driving to the old house because it's so automated, we got to automate the new pathway, and it's going to take action. But when it's just habit-based stuff, it's pretty easy, and it gets wired in pretty damn fast, and then it all becomes automatical. And as I say, this principle applies to everything we're doing throughout all of the formula. But I just want to acknowledge that some people have been doing all the work, and literally they just need to do some active habit change, regardless of all the other work being done, because it's just what your brain's always done. So it's just going to get you to keep doing it. Oh, this is a perfect one. There is a bit of what we can actually call it a headworm out there, that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Absolute and utter bollocks. The good news is our brain will rewire no matter how old we are. Thank goodness. And you are no exception. No exception. You are neurologically designed to change. And the more you do something, the more permanent it will become, and the more automatic it'll become. And the best news about everything is that when your brain stops using those old pathways, those old neuro pathways, and you've built new ones, it actually culls or repurposes the old brain cells. So those urges that you used to feel that were so automatic, all those cravings to eat, non-hunger cravings to eat, because you're always going to feel hungry for actual hunger, but all the non-hunger stuff that we're working on, over time, your brain just completely culls all of those neurons. And that is why I can sit here today and not be thinking about food every 5 minutes and not be getting cravings when I have an emotional reaction, because I've rewired those habit loops so often that the neurology is just not there. And so I'm not having to fight cravings. They're just not there because that loop hasn't been set up. The loop's gone. It's gone. It's been replaced by something new, a new automatic reaction to the exact same triggers. So that's what I want for you. And that's what freedom really is. That's why it's so exciting. Anybody can do this. Doesn't matter how old you are. Yes, it takes a bit longer when you're older, but ultimately it will work for you. Again, I'll explain one of these. So the one on the right is sometimes when I do WhatsApp support, people send me little emojis. And this was a lady I've been working with who'd had really, really struggled with compulsive eating at every meal. And her trophies were a sign that she got through breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And as you can see, by the end, it gets easier and easier and easier. The more you do it, the easier it gets, the less the compulsion, till eventually the compulsion to overeat is just gone, gone, gone. So in summary, 5 main reasons we overeat: dieting, critical self-talk, unmet emotional needs, people-pleasing and exhaustion, and then harder, just good old habit. And the solution is what I call the formula. It's all these 5 components. You got to reconnect, you got to rethink, release and regulate, rest, and rewire. Here's the catch. You need to do all 5. You can't just do one of them and expect all your overeating to go away. And I think a lot of people who listen to this will have tried therapy or tried something and they've had some success, but there was still overeating going on. Great news. Now we've covered all 5 criteria. For some of you, you'll only need to work on 2 or 3 of them. For some of you, you're like, oh shit, Bennett, I need to work on all 5. No problem. It's just going to take time. That's all. That's all you have to do. And, here's the good thing. Because our brains are malleable, because we can rewire, so long as you're practicing all 5 diligently, consistently, with a lot of action, it will change. And it'll be a permanent change because we're completely rewiring the brain. So usually it's not a quick fix, but the work that we do is the permanent one. Because all this time, you've been flying east, usually, following some kind of crazy restrictive dietary protocol, and you've been flying east looking for a sunset. You had completely the wrong strategy. You were going in the wrong direction. You could have doubled down on that as much as you wanted. It wasn't going to work. But now what we've done is we've given you the right strategy, the strategy that does actually work through repetition and consistency, and the strategy that will get you to freedom. So now you're on freedom air, baby. And with that, as I said, I promised there was an Easter egg hidden in this training. And the word I want you to remember that is your special gift code is the word priority. So think you're on an airplane and this is your code that's going to give you priority boarding, baby. So priority is the word you need to remember. That is your special gift code should you choose to work with me. All right. I promised you at the beginning that I wouldn't sugarcoat anything. So before we wrap up, because I think at this point you're probably like, yeah, let's go. I want to do this formula. Let's get stuck in. Whoa, let's just slow down a second because I got to give you. And again, oh man, I was like, should I say this? Because if I say this, they're not going to want to work with me and they're going to dilly-dally and they're going to try and get out of it, because this is the hard bit. You're going to fail. This is the lesson I had to learn the hard way. You're going to fail, and you're going to fail repeatedly. Now, nobody wants to fail, but I'd rather be honest with you, because it is the biggest thing I hear is I couldn't bear to fail. And if somebody says that to me, I just say to you, I'm going to be honest, you will. You're going to fail repeatedly. This is like learning a sport and a language at the same time. We're learning a totally new language of food freedom. Plus, we're actively having to do things differently. It's a lot to think about. Think about when you first learned to drive, if you've learned to drive. At first, it's like, oh my God, there's so much. But over time, you can just get in a car and drive from one place to another without even realizing you were driving. You get there and you think, I have no memory of that journey. That's how possible it is to change. But at first, there's a lot going on and there's a lot to do. And because of that, and because it's food, and we can't just cut it out cold turkey, because we're talking about eating and we need to eat to survive, there will be mistakes. And you will make lots, there'll be lots of little failures. There's going to be slip ups, and you're going to do lots of them until you succeed. Inevitably, you're guaranteed to succeed. And we know that because your brain will rewire, provided you've got the right strategy, which you do. So that's the good news. So think of it like the stock market, investing in the stock market. There's times where there's little pullbacks, there's big recessions, there's huge dips. It's bumpy ride. There's little shakeouts and fakeouts along the way. But ultimately, so long as you remain in the stock market and you remain invested, over time you get this beautiful compounding growth. It's the same with the work that we do. The problem with this, though, is, and here's the bad news, is that most people quit when they start to slip up. Most people, that negative mindset kicks in, and it's like, you see, there's the evidence you need. You're always going to be broken. Nothing's ever going to change. Or this works for everybody else, but it won't work for me. And I promise you that it will, but you got to stay in it to win it. So there's two reasons why people generally give up. Now, here's the bit I didn't really want to share with you, but I'll go for it. The one is what I call the suck. Our bodies are set up to repeat things and attach dopamine to them, which motivates us to do them again, particularly if there's a rewarding experience at the end of them. And so, yes, we acknowledge that a craving for a donut is not a command. The problem is those damn cravings, that dopamine is set up to scream and cry and wail and sulk if we don't do the behavior that's in our neurochemistry to complete. It's what I call the dopamine tantrum, particularly for people who've been struggling with real compulsive eating. It can really suck to be going through that period of, even if you're not hungry, but just not giving in to the craving, that urge to eat that has got nothing to do with hunger, you're going to go through a bit of a suck fest. And it can be really unfun for a lot of people. Now, I can give you ways to make it better. I can help you navigate it as easily as possible. And I usually just give one simple tool, not 10 different coping mechanisms, because, when you're in a craving, you don't want to be trying to figure out like how you're going to meditate. You actually just need something quick and easy that's going to work to get you to the other side. But the fact is that it's hard. And those cravings sometimes can be really hard to ignore. And because of that, and you're human, you'll probably give in. And when you do, you might feel a deep sense of sadness or guilt or shame around it. And again, that guilt can make us want to quit because we think it's never going to get easier. But it really, really does. And the second reason I find people give up too soon is what I call the stuck. Essentially, there's a lot going on. We've spoken about 5 different components of this formula. There's a lot. And it can be overwhelming. They can feel like they're not making enough progress fast enough. The novelties weren't worn off. Initially there's lots of momentum, but it can get a bit boring as we're kind of doing the general consistent work. And, the mountain can feel quite tall. And then what happens is we naturally start doubting ourselves, or we think we're not going to make it, or we procrastinate because we don't want to do something hard. Oh, this is a classic mental masturbation. Yeah. We just start getting like our dopamine fixes from searching for other solutions and other programs and other shiny objects that will make us feel good, give us that little dopamine hit of excitement again. And that's the danger, is when people pivot and they start something new. But meanwhile, if they just stay the path, if they just keep going, they'll get there. So what is the solution? How do you guarantee that you won't give up? And this, by the way, the solution also happens to fast track and speed up the results. Well, the answer is to invest in a coach. It's to invest in a community, invest in people who get you, who can support you, who can ensure that you don't quit, who will say, keep going. I know you can do this. Give me one more push up. Invest in a coach all the way along. Every time things get bad, you've got people going, don't you worry, just stay in there. Don't panic. Don't get out. In fact, double down. But actually, it's the end that people want to run. They want to leave. But if you want to keep going, you just got to stay in. And oftentimes we want to double down when things get hard. And having a coach, having a guide there beside you to keep cheering you on, supporting you, and helping you with nuanced professional advice from experience, give you the best tools to get out of that suck or that stuck as quickly as possible. That's what you need. If you want to guarantee success, this is the way to do it. Now, hold on. Whoa. Did I just hear some self-sabotage headworms creeping in? I bet I did. I bet as I was talking, you were thinking, oh no, this sounds great, but I can't do it right now because I've just got to pay for that car payment, or I've got to put the kids through college, or I don't have time, or I don't have energy, or I'm sure I could just do this on my own. I'll just take this training. I'm going to try this on my own. But let's be honest, if you'd been able to do it on your own, you probably would have done it already. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't give it a go, but I am saying, why wait? Because here's the thing. If you're somebody who struggles to put your needs first, and I bet that you are, and what happens is if we're presented with an opportunity to actually put ourselves first, and this is me, recovering people pleaser, saying, what do? We say, we make an excuse. It's not intentional. This is something that is so automatic because it doesn't fit our narrative that we are not deserving of our own time and attention and focus and investment. So we start saying, oh, I don't have time. I don't have energy. I don't have this. I don't have money. But you know what? That time never comes. Why? Because we're so busy putting all of our energy, all of our time, all of our finances, all of our focus into everything but our needs. And imagine if you could become somebody who prioritizes yourself the same way that you prioritize all of your loved ones and all of your colleagues and all of your clients and all of your customers. Imagine if you could be that person. Well, I'm going to challenge you. My job as a coach is to get you to take action. And I'm going to challenge you to take one action that is in service of prioritizing, remember your keyword, your code word, you. One action just for you. Don't wait. Don't say, I'll do it later. Do it now. And that's to book a call, to book a freedom call with me or one of my incredible team. I have a small team of amazing people. I literally can't wait for you to meet them. Book a call with one of us and we'll connect. We'll get to know you, a bit about you. What is your specific struggle? And then what we can do once we know that is we can put together a little bit of a game plan for you. We can customize something that suits you. Not everybody needs the same thing. Not everybody needs like the full year of coaching. Some people just need 4 months and that's it. And not everybody needs private coaching and not everybody needs coursework and not everybody needs WhatsApp support. But we've got all these different tools we can use to get you where you need to be. And so once we've had a chat to you, we can actually go, right, well, I can see what you're struggling with and how we best feel we can help you within your budget. If you decide to join us, no matter which way that you do, we're all headed in the same direction, regardless of the tools that you use, regardless how long it takes. The destination is freedom and everybody gets to the same place, regardless of what seat they have on the plane or whether they got priority boarding, right? So we're all going to the same destination. And I want you to know that, because if you're using an excuse now of, I can't afford it or I don't have time, we can customize the plan to work for you. Now, don't forget to use your special code so that you can get your priority boarding. Lastly, here's just a bunch of screenshots. You're welcome to pause them and check in on some of the clients that I've worked with and the kind of experiences they've had of real, true freedom as they've done this work. For these are people who've struggled for decades, often with chronic compulsive eating, and over time, with a lot of patience and persistence, it really does pay off. And that's it. So there's no more tips. There's no more masterclasses that you need, no more free PDFs that you need, no more mini courses or YouTube videos or Instagram reels. This is a time for prioritizing you, not procrastinating. You don't need more knowledge. What you need to do is take action. And your one action that I'd love you to take right now before you do anything for anybody else, no excuses, is to book a call. What have you got to lose? But 15 minutes of your time. We'll put no pressure on you. If it's not your thing, it's not your thing. So I hope you enjoyed that training. I hope you found it really valuable. I'd love to see you soon. And here's to you and your freedom today. Here's to building a future where you do not have to struggle with this anymore.